It's been almost 3 years since the release of Andor Season 1. And I don't know about all of you, but I couldn't be more excited for Season 2, which is just weeks away now. Although the first season received mixed reviews from fans when it debuted on Disney Plus back in 2022, Andor has since become one of the most beloved Star Wars projects in recent times, due to its bold and original take on the Star Wars universe. Whereas other shows before Andor, like the Kenobi series, The Book of Boba Fett, or even The Mandalorian, relied heavily on nostalgia and legacy characters, Andor Season 1 had very few connections to the larger Star Wars canon, and instead focused on story and character development. Yes, we saw Mon Mothma, who first appeared in Return of the Jedi and later in the Clone Wars, and we saw Saw Gerrera, who has appeared in multiple Star Wars projects, and we did get a few brief cameos like Admiral Yularen from the Clone Wars, and a couple name drops of Palpatine, but for the most part Andor Season 1 remained a relatively self-contained story. In a way, this was both a blessing and a curse for Andor. A lot of modern Hollywood projects, especially in the Marvel and Star Wars franchises, have gotten into this trend of naming their movies or shows after popular characters. Naming Andor after a character from a spin-off to a movie that came out nearly 50 years ago probably wasn't the best marketing decision to draw in the crowds, but nevertheless, despite the questionable title and the lack of member berries in Andor, the quality of the series was just good enough on its own to break through these limitations, and is now considered by many fans to be the best Star Wars we have seen since The Empire Strikes Back. However, the writers of the show did tease that Season 2 would feature more familiar faces, and that brings me to the topic of today's video. Could we see Grand Admiral Thrawn himself in Andor Season 2?
Through the Force, you will find balance as well.
Grand Admiral Thrawn was first introduced in the old expanded universe with the Heir to the Empire trilogy of novels by Timothy Zahn. Although those novels have since been decanonized, Thrawn was reintroduced to the canon in Star Wars Rebels soon after Disney purchased Lucasfilm, and has been slowly developing as a character ever since. Now, Thrawn is the head of the ISB, which stands for the Imperial Security Bureau. These guys are like the CIA of the Empire, collecting intelligence from spies and feeding it to the Imperial military. We can tell that Thrawn is part of the ISB because he wears a white Imperial uniform, unlike the classic grey uniform of the Imperial Navy that we saw all throughout the original trilogy. Now, of course, the ISB played a major role in Andor Season 1 as the primary antagonist of that show. After the rebels' attack on Aldhani in Andor Season 1, we see how the ISB ruthlessly cracked down on the rebels and almost immediately found out who was involved. Lieutenant Blevin describes their duty as like healthcare providers who treat sickness in the Empire by eradicating rebellious activity and stomping out dissent from the public. When the ISB hears of the heist on Aldhani, it immediately catches the attention of the higher ranks in the Empire. This is when we see Admiral Yularen, who works alongside the Emperor himself. He has come to command the ISB to crack down on all criminal activity with even an indirect effect on the Empire. So given how the attack on Aldhani draws the attention of someone like Admiral Yularen and even Emperor Palpatine himself, as Luthen's rebel activities continue to grow in Season 2, could we see the rebels commit an act against the Empire that demands the attention of someone even higher up the ranks? Someone like Thrawn? Well, that depends on the timeline of Season 2. Thrawn is the major antagonist for much of Star Wars Rebels, and that series takes place across several years leading up to the original trilogy. Andor Season 1 is set approximately 10 years before the original trilogy, but Season 2 is reported to take place also across several years, with each episode arc supposedly jumping forward in time a few years to cover the key events in the rise of the rebellion, with the finale of Season 2 apparently leading directly into where we see Cassian Andor at the start of Rogue One. Now, by the end of Star Wars Rebels, which is still a few years before Rogue One, Thrawn is captured by Ezra Bridger and taken away to Peridea, where we see him in Ahsoka. So unless one of these episode arcs in Andor Season 2 conflicts with the timeline of the Rebels series, then there should really be no reason why Thrawn couldn't appear in Andor, so long as it makes sense for his character to do so. Now, I'm not just coming up with this theory out of the blue. Some other people have speculated online that Thrawn could appear in Andor, and there have been a few clues. The biggest clue that we might be seeing Thrawn in Andor Season 2 comes from what little footage we have seen of the season so far. In a recent promo by Disney of all the projects coming out in 2025, we see a glimpse of Cassian Andor seemingly stealing what looks like a TIE Interceptor. To fans of Star Wars Rebels, this will be a very familiar ship. The TIE Interceptor is an advanced variant of the classic TIE fighter, with greater maneuverability and speed. Now, in Star Wars Rebels, Grand Admiral Thrawn himself was developing another variant of TIE fighter called the TIE Defender on the planet Lothal. Thrawn had difficulty securing funding for this project due to a lot of the Imperial military's budget going to the secret Death Star project. So after Thrawn was defeated by Ezra Bridger in the finale of Rebels and transported to a different galaxy, the project was scrapped and its funding went into finishing the Death Star. So it seems like Andor could potentially be stealing one of these TIE Interceptors, perhaps to use as a weapon for the rebellion. And this then alerts Thrawn to this particular rebel cell, because he would be working closely with the TIE Interceptor branch for his own TIE Defender project. I think it would also make perfect sense to see Thrawn in this season, given that he recently made his live-action debut in the Ahsoka series, and so the actor, Lars Mikkelsen, has already been introduced on screen and, in my opinion, played the role perfectly. Now, I know a lot of fans were disappointed with how Thrawn was written in that series, so maybe having Thrawn in Season 2 of Andor could sort of redeem the character, as Tony Gilroy, the showrunner of Andor, has already proved himself a much more competent writer and showrunner than Dave Filoni when it comes to directing a live-action show. Having Thrawn appear in Andor could also help develop his character for the upcoming Ahsoka Season 2, or potentially even the Mandalorian and Grogu movie. And since Thrawn is presumably going to be the main antagonist for the Mandoverse time period, then giving him some extra screen time to develop his character could help show just how ruthless and cunning a villain he is. Perhaps even having Thrawn be the one to kill off some of our main characters in Andor, like Luthen Rael, since we know that he does not appear in Rogue One or the original trilogy, would also help cement Thrawn as a truly dangerous villain, and would be a great way to not only build more stakes for his character going into Season 2, or the Mandalorian movie, but would also just be a great way to tie some of these Disney Plus projects together and make them feel more like they're part of the same universe, rather than just having different shows exploring different time periods without much interconnection between them. After all, I think it was really great to see Mon Mothma as the Chancellor of the New Republic in Ahsoka, after seeing her struggle with building the rebellion in Andor, so I think it would also be great to see Thrawn go from being in exile and not doing very much in Ahsoka, to seeing him in his prime in Andor as one of the deadliest and most ruthless villains in Star Wars. So, do I think Thrawn could be in Andor Season 2? I think it's possible, and I would love if he did show up, just as long as his appearance had real consequences for the story, and isn't just some cheap cameo to lure in viewers. But whether he will appear in Andor Season 2 or not probably won't affect the quality of the series, and certainly doesn't change how excited I am for Season 2. For those who know Thrawn and are following the story of The Mandalorian, his appearance in a show like Andor would help build his character leading up to the confrontation between the New Republic and the Imperial Remnant in that time period. But for those who don't know who he is, his appearance can still add real stakes and value to the story, and he would just make a great opponent for the rebellion to face off against. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Do you think Thrawn could possibly be in Andor Season 2? Either as a brief cameo or as a major antagonist for our characters? Would you even like to see Thrawn in Andor? Or do you think his appearance would feel like a cheap throwaway cameo? Either way, leave a comment and it would be great to start a discussion. Thank you everyone so much for watching, and may the Force be with you all.